We're joined by Indiana State Senator Jim Toms to discuss what's been happening in the Indiana General Assembly session this week. WNIN Lawmakers is up next. Welcome to WNIN Lawmakers. I'm John Gibson, news manager and local host of WNIN FM's Morning Edition. Before we check in with Senator Toms, here's a report from Indiana Public Broadcasting's Brandon Smith on what happened in the General Assembly this past week.
Republican Senator Stacey Donato says chaplains could help with Indiana's school counselor shortage by providing secular guidance. Her bill says chaplains could only provide religious guidance to students with parental permission, unless a student seeks it out themselves. Democrats say there aren't enough guardrails around parental notification. 3 years ago, Republicans dramatically scaled back protections for most categories of wetlands in Indiana. This week, they took steps to reduce the number of wetlands that fall into the most protected category, Class 3. The measure does provide incentives to developers to protect wetlands. And a debate began this week, but won't finish until at least next year, over whether to increase the speed limit on Indiana interstates and highways in rural areas from 70 to 75 miles per hour. The bill's author says technology has allowed the conversation to happen, but some who testified raised concerns about safety. For Indiana Public Broadcasting, I'm Brandon Smith at the State House.
And we're joined now by Indiana State Senator Jim Toms, who represents Posey County and a portion of western Vanderburgh County. As always, Senator Toms, thank you for coming in.
Happy to be here.
We appreciate the time. Let's talk about a bill that you authored with Senator Boacek, which calls for more people to be allowed to carry firearms in the state capitol. Can you tell us how that bill is progressing and why you think we need that?
Well, the bill got a second reading yesterday, and it'll be up for thirds on Monday. Mm-hmm. That came to me by the Secretary of Treasury, had requested that.
Okay.
And at this point, the four offices, for the four elected statewide offices, the Treasurer, the Attorney General, the Comptroller, and the Secretary of State, mm-hmm. are prohibited from having a firearm in the building. Mm-hmm. And all four of them are happy to see this measure moving because they like that ability to be able to have a firearm and protect themselves when they're walking from their parking and around the city. Mm-hmm. So
they've all four asked for this measure?
Well, the Treasurer asked for it, but the other three are very excited that this bill. Yes. Mm-hmm. And so when the bill was in committee, it was amended to also include their staff. That was a proposal by the chairman of the committee, and so that was approved by the committee, and so that's the bill we have now. And like I said, it's up for third readings Monday. All these bills, anytime you got a bill about firearms, it's always going to be contentious.
Right.
But we're dealing with proper citizens here. We're talking about legitimate people. They're not going to come in there and create havoc. So it sounded like a reasonable request, and so I was happy to assist in the
a reasonable security situation as far as you can tell?
Yeah, we did this back 7 years ago for the House and Senate staff to carry.
Oh, okay, right.
Okay. And typically, as always, there was always the doomsday sayers that the sky's falling with all these people. Well, not everybody carries a gun. Not everybody's going to want to carry a gun. Mm-hmm. But the staff that we're talking about, these folks don't get to park outside the parking lot or outside the building in the parking lot right next to the State House. They got a 2 or 3 block walk to a lonesome garage. Mm-hmm. Now, that was 7 years ago. And in spite of all of the threats, it was going to be the worst thing ever. Nothing happened. 7 years.
Gotcha. All right, well, let's move on to another bill you've authored, Senator Toms. It's Senate Bill 32, as I understand it. It's gotten some attention as well. I believe it calls for a change in public library funding. Mm-hmm. Can you explain what the bill would do?
The bill would, some people are saying we're defunding the libraries or taking away their money. That's not the case at all. It just simply says that removes their taxing authority, and for the libraries then would submit their budgets to an elected fiscal body, such as a city council or a county council. And that's all it does. It won't affect their request for their money, and the bill's not going to get hearing this year because it's an off-year budget year. But I'd had people had called about some of the libraries have enormous amounts of money they sit on, and they're still taxing. And this is the only government entity that can still tax, and they're not directly responsible or accountable to the people. So it just puts them in line with most of these other agencies that they submit their budgets.
So at this point, and I don't have the numbers in front of me, but how does, say, like the EVPL, do they not get allocated funding from like the Vanderburgh County Council?
They can get money from, they actually get money from a lot of sources. They get money that's donated to them, that's gifted to them, and this money that they're applying for in their taxing authority comes right out of the people's wallets. And so I think it only made sense for any authority that gets the taxpayers' money should be responsible on how they spend it and how they allocate it and appropriate it.
Yeah. All right, well, let's move on to the highways and byways, you might say. Senate Bill 57 has garnered some support. It would require automated commercial vehicles to not operate without human supervision in this modern age. You authored this bill with Senators Becker and Mesmer of Southwest Indiana. Basically, what would that bill do, and how is it faring at the State House?
I'm glad you asked me this question because a lot of people don't know about this technology that's being developed, John. This is autonomous trucks. This is a semi-truck without a driver in it. An 80,000-pound semi-truck without a driver in it. I know this research is going on across the country. I think Indiana, even INDOT, is doing some kind of a infrastructure development along I-70 east of Indianapolis, I believe. I'm not sure. I've been told that. This is the second year I've tried to bring this bill forward. This bill has got tremendous support from, well, the International Brotherhood of Teamsters for certain. Other independent trucking associations are concerned about this. I don't believe most of the general public even know that this has been proposed and that there's been a lot of work on this. So they're running trucks out of California into Arizona and Nevada right now. They're running from Houston to Dallas, from Texas to Florida. And they run regular. An autonomous truck, they run it without a driver.
Right.
And they can run unlimited on hours.
Sure, sure.
But the idea of having a truck that size, sharing a roadway with the general public without a driver, ultimately that's the idea. Right now they still have some drivers that's there to overtake a failure in the system, to overtake the controls.
Right, right.
But the ultimate goal is to have these trucks without a driver.
And so you say this has got pretty strong support? You think
Oh, yeah.
it will pass this session?
Well, I don't know if we're going to get a hearing on it. It would go through Homeland Security and Transportation Committee, which I'm on that committee. But when I say support, I think the groups I just told you about are absolutely working hard about getting this across out to the public to know about it. I did a survey, and I asked that specific question. 87% of the people that were surveyed do not want a semi on the road without a driver. Right. And I was talking to the CEO of the Autonomous Trucking Association in Virginia, and he said, well, Senator, sometimes people think a plane, the pilot's actually flying the plane. I said, yeah. He said, it's, computers are controlling the plane. I said, yes, but there is a pilot in the plane.
There's two, as a matter of fact.
Yes. So I would like to see, I'm not trying to stifle this thing, but I think we need somebody, if they want to pay lesser pay, but have someone, a human element in that truck it's not like we've never had phones or a computer fail on us, right?
Sure, sure. All right, well, we'll see how that bill comes along.
Well, thanks for asking, because maybe we get the word out.
Well, in the weeks to come, certainly, yeah, we'll see how that develops. Well, speaking of safety on the highways, I'd like to get your take on the discussions of of possibly increasing the speed limit on interstate highways in Indiana. Do you think that's a safe measure?
Now, that's interesting when you ask that question. When we're talking about another 5 mile an hour increase in speed, if it's going to be
going from 70 to 75?
75, yes, that could be a safety factor. When we're also developing technology with a semi and no driver. I'm trying to question, what are we doing here? I don't think there's going to be a significant difference. Most people are driving 75 now. If it's a 70 mile an hour speed limit, they're driving 77, 80 miles an hour, 82 miles an hour. So I don't think it's going to be a big thing myself. And it's on the interstate outside the cities and towns. It's on the open roadway.
Strictly rural areas,
Yes.
right? Yeah, yeah. Well, I know, over the years, the speed limits have gone up. You mentioned how everyone seems to be driving 75 now when it's 70, but is there a fear that, if the limit's 75, then everyone would be going 80 and on up the ladder?
Well, I think we're all honest and we drive. We have been on the roads where we're running probably over the speed limit and we're overtaken by cars, right? So where does it end? I don't know. I mean, we have limits on how fast you can drive, but they're exceeded. And I'm not saying that, we need to really tighten up. But if they want to bump it up another 5 miles an hour, I just don't see where it would be even noticeable.
And have police agencies weighed in on that, do you know?
I haven't heard anything from the state police on this one. So I don't know. Like I said, when we're talking about road safety anymore today, when I know that we are proposing the notion of these trucks without a driver, then I have to question, what do we wanted hands-free driving. We wanted no texting while driving. We want slowing down through speeds, through construction site.
Sure.
All these features, we want to make sure the roads are safer. And I still go back to this idea that we're doing this. So.
Right. Hard to balance this.
It sure is.
I understand. Well, let's move on to another bill. I believe Brandon mentioned it in the piece at the beginning of the show. You expressed support for a bill coming to the Senate floor that would allow chaplains to be counselors in public schools. What additional qualifications do you think they should have to be able to do that counseling in schools, if any?
Well, I've not read the bill. I just read a little bit about what the bill is trying to do here. I don't know if it would be someone who would have to be ordained or someone who just is involved in the clergy work, perhaps, of some sort. I don't know if it's going to require some sort of a certification or not.
Do you think it should?
I think we should. Absolutely, I think we should.
Require those?
You mean with a?
Yeah. Should we require some sort of?
Yeah, I think there ought to be something. I don't want to make it restrictive here, but I would think that I hope that someone that's willing to fill those positions has some experience in religious matters, and I think the bill is trying to make sure that it's confined, that it's not someone who's going to try to maybe influence somebody to one religion or another, but just try to develop a little bit of moral character as part of a curriculum in our schools. I think today, with what we're seeing in our society, the criminal activity, the drug addictions, all of the ills that society now deals with, I don't see where there's a harm in trying to also help a young child growing as they mature to be able to decide what's right and wrong, what's good and bad in their life. And that balance helps them to navigate through life. I think it's a good thing.
I'm sure some folks would raise concerns about, again, clergy-type folks, as you're saying, coming into public schools. Again, the separation of church and state. Any concerns about that?
Well, that separation of church and state is absolutely, that has been distorted to think that you can't have any kind of a faith-based anything in schools. That notion was derived decades ago, actually back in the founding days of this country when that letter was written by Thomas Jefferson. When I look at our schools today and I look at our society today, every day's news, John, every day's news, the criminal activity that goes on, like I said, the drug addictions, the the breakdown in the family unit, all of these things that we see in our society. If we go back to 1950, 55, 56, we didn't have those things that we have today. And I think there's a place for this right now, just to help the children have some understanding of we have obligations as citizens of this country. Even little children, we have obligations, we have responsibilities. And I think this will help them understand some of those obligations and responsibilities.
All right, well, let's not get into a discussion about the 1950s and what all was happening and not happening there, but...
Well, you got to do some comparison. You have to see, you got to see how we've moved from where we were to where we're at now.
Sure, and of course, but many other things that were happening in the 50s perhaps weren't so...
Well, no, I know, we're talking about this topic here.
Sure. Well, let's move on to, while we're in the education realm here, House Bill 1001 would allow 21st century scholar funds to be used for a wider variety of post-secondary education and training programs. It has passed the Indiana House now, and it's headed to the state Senate. I don't know how much you've looked at this particular one, but what are your thoughts on the measure as far as you know?
Well, I haven't read the bill. That's the House bill. The House bills haven't come to us yet.
Right.
And I've actually had my hands full. I think most of all the senators and the House had their hands full with dealing with their bills. And so I haven't seen this. I really couldn't comment on it. I don't know the language or exactly the full text of what it's trying to do here.
Yeah. Well, yeah, the 21st century scholar funds, I mean, yeah, I guess there's talk of trying to make those monies available in other places in the educational realm. But we'll get back to that when we know more about it, I suppose. Also, while we're talking about the House, and again, this is something you may just have to think of generally and not so much specifically the bill. The House is looking to roll back some child labor laws that would allow teenagers to have fewer restrictions on working. What are your thoughts on that? Do you think more teens should be in the workforce, or are they too young?
That's a really good question. I just been hearing about that, Bill, and I don't know my take on that. I know when I was high school age, it was pretty tightly controlled on how old you had to be to work and the hours you worked, and you had to have I think a work permit or something like that.
Right.
And so I suppose that what's bringing a bill like this, maybe it's because of shortage of employees. I have no idea why that bill's brought up like that. I guess we'll have to see when it's final, if it gets far enough along, the final product on what it stipulates on how many hours you can work. And that's, I'm sure, going to be debated when it gets over the Senate side.
Sure. I mean, I assume there would be concerns about how many hours young folks, I mean, they need time for homework.
You got to balance. How's that going to work? I don't know. I mean, and could it reflect bad on their learning and their education? I don't know. It's I mean, a teenager would like to make some money, have some money to spend, right? And what would be more appealing to them? But it's an interesting bill.
All right. Well, again, that's something that we'll watch as it moves through the General Assembly, if it does continue moving.
Yeah.
Let's look at House Bill 1004. That's another one that's headed to the Senate. Again, you may not have all the specifics on it, but you've probably heard about it. It would allow a 13th check in a year for public pension recipients. That's something I believe came about during the pandemic. Do you think that would be a good idea from here forward?
Absolutely. I've always supported that 13th check. I have always held firm. For the most part, that 13th check goes to some retiree who probably didn't get a huge benefit package when they retired. And so their retirement is maybe a kind of a meager amount of money in today's scheme of income levels. And that one extra check is very beneficial. And I'll tell you why it's important to me, because I remember when my dad retired, and he retired from the school corporation. He was custodian. And so his retirement was not huge. And when he died, my mom maintained that 13th check. And every year she got that check, she would always call me right away to tell me she got that check in the mail. And I know how important that was to her. That was critically important. As small amount as it was important. And I know the people that receive it, or did receive it, it was either dedicated for something at the end of the year, or it was just the fact that you got a little bit extra money in your pocket.
Right.
And why we took it away, I was opposed to it. I fought against that. I know Senator Becker fought against it. It was a bad idea. And I hope this bill gets to the Senate, because I certainly will support it.
Yeah, it has passed the House. You think there is enough support to get it all the way through?
I hope so. I do. I don't know. You know, the time when they changed up and got away from that and went with a COLA or whatever that was. I forgot what they had changed out with that. But I was all opposed to that, and I'm glad to see this come back. And maybe there's enough legislators got enough calls and emails from their constituents that, yeah, we can get this done. I hope we can.
We have just a few minutes left. What are some of the other bills that you filed this year? Anything you're hoping to get through here in the next few weeks?
Well, one of the bills I have is going to get a hearing this week. It concerns banks. The discrimination that some banks, not all, but there are some. There's a. It's called. What is the term they use for this? Where banks will base whether they're going to financially assist a business or a company or even individuals based on a social credit score. I've never heard of that before in my life, what a social credit score is. But it could be a bank that determines a product that is made by this company or a service that's provided is something they don't agree with. And for that reason, they won't do any financial dealings with these. I don't know if the bill is going to get a vote, but it certainly is going to get a hearing, I'm hoping, Wednesday. And the idea is that that's not why they're in business. If it's based on a financial risk, sure, the bank absolutely should be able to scrutinize whether they want to loan money to something like it. But based on a particular product, maybe it's because maybe it's a company that makes motorcycles, or maybe it's a company that's in fossil fuels, oil or coal. That's what the financial institutions was designed to do. They would choose who's good, bad on that scale.
Right. All right. Well, any other bills in the Senate or House that have caught your attention this session, good or bad?
Well, I know Senator Rick Niemeyer has a bill about the stop arm on school buses that will have the red flashing light. And I think they're going to be equipped with cameras as well because of how many cars blow through these stop signs. He reported in the testimony that people even pass on the right side of the bus while it's stopped. I don't doubt that. I mean, we all drive. We see what kind of habits are out there. I mean, you know, for the most part, people are driving responsibly, but there's those that do something. So that bill, that was an interesting bill.
So that would add a camera to the actual stop sign, or just the bus itself, or
it would be the sign. It would take it only if the car would, and it would just get the plate. And so.
Okay. Anything else in the closing moments here?
Well, no. I just looking forward to the halfway point when these bills cross over, and then it has been an interesting session. They're all interesting, but the short ones, it's really a scramble. If you want to see something entertaining, come up to the State House during short sessions and watch the running around, the bills flying, everything's hustling and trying to get it done, and it's something.
And of course, in the short session, there's no way all these bills, there's not enough time, not enough days of the week, right?
No. And we were all limited. I don't know about the House, but the Senate, we were all limited to 5 bills per legislator, and as a chairman, we could get 2 extra ones in. So I had 7. I did do a bill for a lady that her son took a dare on the internet of choking himself with a belt. The idea, I don't know what, but it cost him his life. And so I have a bill. I'm hoping we can get a hearing on that about providing that they may put in their curriculum a measure about the dangers of the internet and taking these kind of challenges and stuff. So.
All right, we will have to leave it there. Okay. Senator Jim Thoms, once again, thank you for joining us. We always appreciate it. Next week, our scheduled guest is Indiana State Representative Wendy McNamara. Hope you can join us then. I'm John Gibson of WNIN FM. Thanks for watching WNIN Lawmakers.